The sandstorm howled across the barren expanse of Kevera 7, a desolate planet known for its harsh conditions and poisonous atmosphere. Ethan Grayson tightened the seal on his environmental suit, his visor flashing red warnings about the decreasing oxygen levels in his tank. He was miles away from his crashed shuttle, stranded on this forsaken planet while waiting for rescue. As he trudged across the cracked terrain, his boots crunching against the brittle ground, his AI assistant, Vega, spoke through his helmet. "Ethan, the toxin levels are spiking. I suggest you find shelter soon." Ethan gritted his teeth. "No shelter here, Vega. Just sand, rocks, and death." But then, something caught his eye. A faint, flickering light in the distance. Curious and desperate for anything that might improve his situation, Ethan quickened his pace. As he approached, he realized it wasn't just a random light. It was a small crash site, with debris scattered around a sleek alien pod. Among the wreckage lay a figure, humanoid but unmistakably alien. Her skin shimmered faintly with a silvery blue hue, almost like a living gemstone. She was unconscious, her chest rising and falling weakly, and her body was surrounded by faint trails of bioluminescent blood pooling on the ground. "Vega, what am I looking at?" Ethan asked, crouching next to her. "Species, Scifi. Rare. Their biology is highly advanced but sensitive to environmental toxins. She's dying, Ethan." Ethan frowned. "What's killing her?" "The toxins in the air are attacking her organs. Her body's natural defenses are failing. If you don't intervene, she has minutes, maybe less." Ethan hesitated. He knew that Scifi were a reclusive species, rarely seen even in the vast reaches of space. They avoided humans, seeing them as too chaotic, too destructive. But now, one of them lay dying right in front of him. "What can I do?" he asked. "There's a slim chance your blood could help. The iron content in human blood might neutralize the toxins in her system. But it's risky," Ethan finished. He stared down at the alien woman. Her breathing was shallow, her face contorted in pain. His hand hovered over the medical injector on his belt. "Ethan, this could kill you," Vega warned. "Her immune system might reject your blood, and we don't know how her body will react." Ethan shook his head. "If I walk away now, she dies. I'm not that kind of person." He injected a syringe into his arm, drawing his own blood, and carefully fed it into the alien's damaged veins. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her body spasmed, her eyes snapping open, bright, glowing orbs that locked onto his face. Ethan froze as she grabbed his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. For a second, he thought he'd made a terrible mistake. But then, her breathing steadied, her chest rising and falling more evenly. "Looks like it worked," Ethan murmured. The alien's gaze softened, her lips moving to form faint, unintelligible words. Ethan leaned closer, unsure if she was thanking him or cursing him. Either way, her life was no longer slipping away. "Now let's see how we both survive this," he muttered, glancing at the darkening skies above. Ethan watched as the alien woman's breathing steadied, the shimmering glow of her skin gradually returning. The transformation was almost immediate, as if his blood had triggered some kind of renewal in her body. Her bright, luminous eyes locked onto him, filled with both confusion and cautious recognition. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan wasn't even sure if she could understand him. The faint, unintelligible sounds she made were unlike any language he had ever heard. Still, she was alive, and that was enough for now. "Hey," Ethan said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're okay. I helped you." The alien tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, she tried to sit up but winced in pain. Ethan moved closer, supporting her carefully. Her skin felt cool against his gloved hands, almost unnaturally smooth, like polished metal. "Don't push yourself," he said. "You've been through a lot." "Ethan," Vega's voice interrupted. "Her vitals are stabilizing, but she's still weak. We need to move before another storm hits." Ethan glanced at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering again on the horizon, swirling ominously. Time was running out. He turned back to the alien. "We need to get you out of here. Can you walk?" The alien seemed to understand enough. She nodded slightly, though her movements were shaky. Ethan helped her to her feet, her tall, slender frame leaning heavily on him. "Vega, do we have any idea where her ship might be?" Ethan asked. Scanning the area, Vega replied. "Her craft appears to be a short distance north, though it's heavily damaged. I doubt it can fly." Ethan grimaced. "Figures. Guess we're walking." As they moved, Ethan couldn't help but notice how silent his companion was. She didn't speak, but her sharp, glowing eyes seemed to take in everything around her. The barren landscape, the storm brewing in the distance, and, occasionally, him. It wasn't hostility in her gaze, but something more like curiosity. "Look," Ethan said as they navigated a rocky path. "I don't know if you can understand me, but I didn't mean to intrude. I just couldn't leave you there." She didn't respond, but her hand tightened briefly on his arm, a gesture that almost felt like gratitude. After nearly an hour of walking, they'd reached the wreckage of her ship. The sleek, silver craft was half buried in sand, its hull scarred and broken. Ethan frowned. It was worse than he'd expected. "Your ship's in bad shape," he said, gesturing toward it. "But if there's any working tech inside, we might be able to call for help." The alien woman moved toward the ship, her steps steadier now. She glanced back at Ethan, then pointed toward the entrance. "You want me to go with you?" he asked. She nodded, her expression serious. "All right," Ethan said, following her inside. "Let's see what we can do. But I hope you've got a backup plan, because we're gonna need it." Inside the dimly lit ship, the air was thick with tension. Ethan knew he was running out of time, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far bigger than himself. Inside the broken alien ship, Ethan's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating shattered control panels and scattered debris. The alien woman, now moving with more confidence, gestured toward a glowing panel on the far wall. "That's your communications system, isn't it?" Ethan guessed, his voice echoing in the hollow chamber. The woman nodded, her glowing eyes flickering with urgency. Ethan moved closer and inspected the panel. Though it was cracked and faintly sparking, it still had some power. "Vega, can we make this work?" Ethan asked. "I'll need a few minutes to interface with their technology," Vega replied. "It's unlike anything I've encountered before, but I'll try." Ethan set his backpack down and pulled out a multi-tool. "All right, let's see what we can do." As he worked, the alien woman stood nearby, watching him intently. Occasionally, she would point or gesture, as if trying to guide him. Her silent assistance made the process surprisingly efficient. "Got it," Ethan muttered after a few minutes, as the panel flickered to life. "Now let's send out a distress signal." But before Vega could finish the transmission, the ground beneath them rumbled. Ethan froze, his eyes darting to the entrance of the ship. "That's not good," he said. "Hostile activity detected," Vega warned. "Two heat signatures approaching from the south. They're armed." The alien woman's expression darkened. She moved quickly to a hidden compartment and pulled out a weapon, a sleek alien-designed rifle that hummed softly when activated. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Well, I guess you're not entirely helpless," he said. She didn't respond but motioned for him to stay low as they moved toward the entrance. Outside, the storm was closing in, swirling sand making visibility almost impossible. Ethan could just barely make out two figures in the distance, their silhouettes moving with purpose. They weren't human. They were taller, bulkier, and carried weapons that glowed ominously in the dim light. "Who are they?" Ethan whispered. "Most likely bounty hunters," Vega replied. "They could be after her or her ship." Ethan cursed under his breath. "Great, just what we need." The alien woman crouched beside him, her weapon aimed steadily at the approaching figures. Her glowing eyes burned with determination. Ethan felt a strange mix of awe and fear. She might be quiet, but she was clearly no stranger to combat. As the bounty hunters came closer, one of them fired a warning shot, the blast tearing through the sand near the ship. The alien woman didn't wait. She fired back, her rifle emitting a sharp, piercing sound that struck one of the attackers in the shoulder, sending him stumbling. Ethan scrambled for cover, pulling his own sidearm from his belt. He wasn't a soldier, but he'd been in enough dangerous situations to know how to hold his ground. "Guess we're doing this," he muttered. The battle was fast and chaotic, with sand whipping around them and energy blasts lighting up the stormy sky. Together, Ethan and the alien woman fought back, their unlikely partnership proving more effective than either of them expected. By the time the last bounty hunter fell, the storm was nearly upon them. Ethan turned to the alien woman, who was breathing heavily but still standing strong. "We need to leave now," he said. She nodded and pointed back to the ship. Ethan understood immediately. Whatever their next move was, it would have to happen fast. The storm wasn't going to wait, and neither would whoever sent the hunters. Ethan and the alien woman rushed back inside the battered ship, the roar of the storm growing louder with every passing second. Sand swirled around them, seeping into the cracks of the ship's hull and dimming the faint light from the control panel. "Vega, is the distress signal ready?" Ethan asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Almost there," Vega replied. "I've managed to boost the signal strength, but something strange is embedded in the ship's system. A hidden message." Ethan glanced at the alien woman. "A message? From who?" The woman frowned, her glowing eyes narrowing. She stepped forward and began interacting with the panel, her slender fingers dancing across the strange, alien symbols. As she worked, a soft, melodic hum filled the air. "She's decoding it," Vega said. "I'm translating in real time. Hold on." Suddenly, the panel projected a hologram into the air, a distorted image of another alien, similar in appearance to the woman but older, with silver patterns etched across their skin. The figure's voice was calm, but carried an edge of desperation. "Ziara," the hologram said, addressing the alien woman. "If you're seeing this, it means you've survived the crash. But danger is closing in. Our enemies know of your mission, and they will stop at nothing to silence you. You must deliver the artifact to its destination. It is the key to saving our people." Ethan's eyes widened. "Artifact? What artifact?" The hologram continued. "Trust no one except those who prove their loyalty. And remember, sacrifices must be made for the greater good." With that, the hologram flickered out, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Ethan turned to the woman. "Ziara, that's your name, isn't it?" She nodded slowly, her expression grim. Then, from beneath her armor, she revealed a small glowing orb, its surface swirling with vibrant colors. "That's it," Ethan murmured, staring at the artifact. "The thing they're after." "Ethan," Vega interrupted, "this changes everything. If that artifact is important enough to kill for, then we're in far more danger than we thought." "No kidding," Ethan muttered. He turned to Ziara. "So what's the plan? Are we supposed to take this thing somewhere? Because I hate to break it to you, but we're kind of stranded here." Ziara's eyes softened slightly, and for the first time she spoke, a single word in her strange, melodic language. "Together." Ethan blinked, surprised. "You can talk." She nodded again, her voice stronger now. "Together. Safe." Ethan couldn't help but chuckle despite the tension. "Well, that's comforting. All right, together it is." Just as he spoke, the ship's alarms blared, red lights flashing across the cabin. Vega's voice was sharp. "Hostiles approaching. Multiple vehicles. They've tracked us." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Great, just great." Ziara gripped the artifact tightly, her eyes meeting Ethan's with a silent determination. "Looks like we're not done fighting," Ethan said, pulling out his sidearm. Let's make sure this thing doesn't fall into the wrong hands. As the sound of engines grew louder outside, Ethan and Zira prepared themselves for the next battle. Together, they stood ready to protect the artifact, knowing that failure wasn't an option. The alarms echoed through the alien ship as the vibrations from incoming vehicles shook the ground. Ethan glanced out a cracked viewport. Through the swirling sandstorm, the outlines of 3 armored vehicles became visible. The headlights cut through the haze like glowing eyes, creeping closer. "Vega, any chance we can fly this ship out of here?" Ethan asked, his tone half hopeful. "Negative," Vega replied. "This vessel is too damaged to achieve flight. You'll need to hold them off while I finish encrypting the distress signal." "Of course we do," Ethan muttered, pulling his sidearm from his holster. He turned to Ziara, who stood firm, holding her alien rifle with practiced ease. Despite the storm and danger, her calm determination never wavered. "All right, Ziara," Ethan said. "You're the one with the fancy rifle. I'll cover you. Let's make this a welcoming party they won't forget." Ziara nodded, her glowing eyes narrowing with focus. She stepped toward the ship's entrance, Ethan close behind. As the enemy vehicles stopped, armed figures disembarked, their weapons gleaming in the storm's dim light. They were mercenaries, hulking alien warriors clad in advanced armor, their movements coordinated and precise. One of them stepped forward, his voice amplified by a translator device. "Hand over the artifact, and you may leave with your lives." Ethan shouted back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, sure. Why don't you come take it yourself?" Without waiting for a response, Zara raised her rifle and fired. A bolt of glowing energy shot through the storm, striking one of the mercenaries and sending him crashing to the ground. The fight erupted in an instant. Blasts of energy filled the air, the storm swirling around them as sand and light merged into chaos. Ethan ducked behind a piece of debris, firing carefully at the advancing mercenaries. "Vega, how's that signal coming?" he yelled over the noise. 75% complete," Vega responded. "You'll need to hold them off a little longer." "Great," Ethan muttered, ducking as a blast tore through the metal near his head. Ziara moved with grace, her every shot precise and devastating. Despite their superior numbers, the mercenaries seemed unprepared for her skill. Ethan watched in awe as she took down 2 more enemies, her glowing rifle lighting up the storm. But the mercenaries weren't giving up. One of them launched a grenade toward the ship, its arc aimed perfectly to disable the panel Vega was working on. "Not happening," Ethan yelled. He sprinted forward, sliding across the sand and grabbing the grenade midair. With all his strength, he hurled it back toward the enemy vehicles. The explosion lit up the storm, sending debris flying. Ziara glanced at Ethan, a flicker of admiration in her eyes. For the first time, a small, approving smile appeared on her face. "Signal is ready," Vega announced. "I've sent out our coordinates. Now we just need to survive until help arrives." Ethan smirked, gripping his weapon tightly. "That's the easy part, right?" As the mercenaries regrouped, Ethan and Ziara stood shoulder to shoulder, ready for the next wave. Their bond, though unspoken, had grown stronger. Together, they would fight to protect the artifact and each other. The storm raged on, its howling winds masking the sounds of boots crunching over sand as the mercenaries advanced. Ethan and Ziara crouched behind the ship's twisted hull, their backs against the battered metal. The enemy regrouped, and the blasts from their weapons lit up the storm in fiery flashes. "They're not giving up," Ethan muttered, reloading his sidearm with shaky hands. He peeked over the edge of their cover and saw the mercenaries forming a tight formation, moving closer. Ziara's glowing eyes narrowed as she inspected their enemies. She tapped a button on her rifle, adjusting its settings. Without a word, she climbed higher onto the debris for a better vantage point. "Wait, what are you doing?" Ethan hissed. She turned and gave him a calm but firm look, one that said, "Trust me." Ethan sighed and pressed his back against the hull. "Fine. You be the hero." The alien woman moved like a shadow, her agility unmatched as she darted between pieces of wreckage. The mercenaries didn't see her until it was too late. A sharp crack echoed through the storm as Ziara fired her weapon, taking down two enemies in quick succession. Her attack threw the mercenaries into disarray. They scrambled for cover, yelling orders in an alien tongue. Ethan saw his chance and popped up, firing at their exposed flanks. His aim wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep them off balance. "Ethan, I've intercepted their communications," Vega's voice chimed in his earpiece. "They've called for reinforcements. A dropship is en route. Estimated arrival in 5 minutes." 5 minutes. Ethan groaned. "That's forever in a gunfight." "Hold your position," Vega replied. "I'm analyzing their dropship's trajectory. We might have a slim chance to escape if we time this right." Ziara dropped back down beside Ethan, her rifle smoking from the intense firing. She pointed toward the artifact strapped to her side, then toward the stormy horizon. Her meaning was clear. They needed to get the artifact to safety before the reinforcements arrived. Ethan nodded. "All right. Vega, how far are we from the closest safe zone?" "There's a canyon 2 clicks east," Vega answered. "It's deep enough to provide cover, but you'll need to move now." Ethan glanced at Ziara. "You ready to run?" She gave a determined nod, and without another word, they bolted from their cover. Blaster fire rained down around them as the mercenaries realized what was happening. Ethan's heart pounded as they zigzagged through the storm, dodging explosions and returning fire when they could. Zara led the way, her movements swift and purposeful. Despite the chaos, she kept the artifact secure, her grip never faltering. Just as they reached the canyon's edge, a deafening roar filled the air. Ethan turned and saw the enemy dropship descending, its massive engines kicking up a whirlwind of sand. "This is going to get worse before it gets better," Ethan muttered, clutching his weapon. Ziara glanced back at him, her expression unreadable but resolute. Together, they prepared for the next wave, knowing the fight wasn't over yet. The enemy dropship descended, its engines creating a deafening roar and kicking up clouds of sand that stung Ethan's face. The mercenaries regrouped behind the ship's shadow, their weapons raised and ready. Above the chaos, the storm raged on, but Ethan and Ziara stood their ground at the edge of the canyon. "Ethan," Vega's voice crackled in his earpiece, "the reinforcements have landed. If we don't act now, they'll overrun your position." "Suggestions, genius," Ethan shouted back, his grip tightening on his weapon. "There's a natural rock overhang nearby," Vega replied. "If you lure them under it, I can collapse it with the ship's remaining energy reserves. It'll take them out but leave you two with no backup power." Ethan glanced at Ziara. Her glowing eyes were sharp, focused on the approaching mercenaries. He quickly relayed Vega's plan. Ziara nodded, understanding the risks but seeing no other choice. "All right, Vega. Do it," Ethan said, determination hardening his voice. Ziara and Ethan fired at the mercenaries, taunting them as they backed toward the overhang. The enemy, confident in their numbers, pursued relentlessly. Blasts of energy zipped past Ethan's head as he ducked and rolled behind a rock for cover. "Come on, you ugly bastards," he yelled, firing wildly to keep their attention. Ziara moved like a shadow, her shots precise and deadly. She stayed close to Ethan, ensuring the artifact remained protected. Despite the chaos, they worked seamlessly, their trust in each other unshakable. As the mercenaries closed in, Ethan could hear the hum of the dropship's engine shifting. It hovered closer, its spotlight illuminating their position. "Vega, now would be a great time for that collapse," Ethan yelled. "Just a few more seconds," Vega replied. The mercenaries, now directly beneath the overhang, raised their weapons for a final assault. Ethan's heart pounded as he prepared for the worst. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the canyon. The ground beneath the overhang trembled as the rocks above began to shift. The mercenaries looked up too late. With a deafening roar, the overhang collapsed, sending tons of rock crashing down. Dust and debris filled the air as the canyon shook violently. The enemy dropship, caught in the falling rubble, spun out of control and smashed into the ground with an explosion that lit up the stormy sky. Ethan coughed, waving away the dust as he struggled to stand. Ziara appeared beside him, helping him up. She looked at him, her usually stoic face softening into a small smile. "You okay?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. Ziara nodded, her glowing eyes conveying gratitude and admiration. "Vega," Ethan called out. "I'm here," Vega replied. "The mercenaries are neutralized, but the ship's power is completely drained. I've sent a final beacon. Hopefully, someone friendly will find you soon." Ethan sighed, looking at Ziara, and the artifact still secure at her side. "We've done our part. Now we wait." As the storm began to clear, the two of them sat on the edge of the canyon, the artifact between them. For the first time, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. Whatever happened next, he knew they had made a difference, and somewhere in the distance, help was on its way.